What is up, my friends? It's Halsey Schider with the Helicopter Podcast. And just as always, super excited to be bringing you another episode today. Big thanks to our partners over at Vertical Helicasts. If you haven't checked out Vertical Helicasts yet, I highly suggest you do. It's the Helicopter Podcast, the Hangar Z Podcasts, and the Real Rescue. And of course, to our listeners, wouldn't be possible without you guys. So we greatly appreciate you. And excited to continue to bring out some really fun content, including today's guest, Mr. Kenny Keller. I don't know Kenny, but I'm very familiar with Kenny's voice and Kenny's face because I see him on social media quite often promoting his business, Helicopter Online Ground School, Hogs for short. So just super excited to have Kenny on the show. Kenny, how are you doing, bud?
Good. Glad to be here. I appreciate you reaching out to me and asking me to join your show.
Yeah, and actually, just on that, thank you to, I believe it was, is it Chris Nelson?
Yep.
Chris Nelson, if you're listening, thank you for listening. And thank you for reaching out because this was a recommendation to reach out to Kenny and get you on the podcast. So if you are listening to the podcast and you have an idea of someone that would be an awesome guest like Kenny or yourself or whatever, please reach out. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and this just helps. You know, one of the hardest things about doing a podcast is getting really awesome guests continually. So thank you to Chris. Kenny, I love the background there. What am I seeing on those screens behind you? It looks like a lot of pre-solo or check ride photos. What's going on?
Yep. This is what we call the Hogs Wall of Fame. And I'll first mention that Hogs, that nickname was given to us by our members. We never set out to call it Hogs. We created Helicopter Online Ground School, and people just started calling us Hogs. They just would email in and, hey, thanks, Hogs. And so that's where the name came from. And about, we'll say 5 or 6, 7 years ago, we started taking our members' pictures and putting them on a panel, an old, ugly paneled wall in an old hangar we were in, just because we wanted to celebrate the success of our members after they passed their private pilot check ride or their commercial, their instrument, their CFI. And we start plashing them on this old paneled wall. And then we moved to this hangar we're in now, and we developed this wall that is behind me. It's a pretty large wall. It actually came out of a university. It's I don't know the technical term for it, but it's like, the choir stands in front of, the big wall that emits the sound. And we started putting the pictures up on there, and we filled it up. So we had over 300 members on that wall, and we decided, hey, what are we going to do? Because this thing is full, and we decided to go digital with it. So now we call it the Digital Hogs Wall of Fame, which is our members, when they pass their check ride, they're just excited to get through their test, as you can imagine, right? We've all been there.
Of course.
We've all done that. Passing your check ride is a big deal. And they just start sending us in pictures. So we are happy to put them up on the Hogs Wall of Fame. They love seeing themselves up there. And when we first created it, we thought, people will probably like this idea, and eventually they'll want to be on that wall. And now 6, 7 years later, someone will be starting out and they'll email and go, Kenny, I'm going to be on that Hogs Wall of Fame. That's my goal, is to get on that wall. So it started as an idea with just taking some pictures and putting them on this old wood paneled wall with tape into this big, massive thing called the Hogs Wall of Fame. And
that's awesome.
We're super proud of it. And now it's digital. So when somebody sends us a picture, pass their check ride, it's a matter of just putting them up on the screen. And we include the wall in the videos that way, mainly in our YouTube videos, but in some of our courses as well, so that people get a chance to actually see themselves. Because before, if you're 1 in 300, unless we take the camera over there and go by every picture, you never get to see yourself. And so people now are excited because they're like, hey, I saw myself in my video, or I saw my instructor and you're, on the wall. So it's turned into something really cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love how that happens. I love when things organically just kind of turn into something, whether it's your name kind of, getting the moniker of Hogs, and or just having this idea to showcase your clients as they have used your system to gain their success in passing a check ride. So obviously super interested to learn more about your business and for our listeners to learn more about your business. However, kind of want to start off with you and your background and what you've done in the helicopter world. I had a chance to read through again. One of my favorite things in the podcast is actually to connect with people I don't know, and that I haven't really had a relationship with in the past. And it's fun just to get the brief resume description and then kind of dive deep from there. One of the things that caught my eye, speaking about passing check rides, is it sounds like you might have had an experience that has shaped you and probably kind of put you in this position of helping others not fail check rides. But it sounds like a private check ride didn't go so well for you. So that seems like a good place to start this conversation, kind of in the beginning of your helicopter career.
It is a good place because I started making videos to promote a little helicopter company that I had before I actually started Hogs. And I was open and honest up front about my first failure on my first private pilot check ride. And as I started Hogs, people would email in interested in my course and they're like, "Aren't you that guy that failed your check ride?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Right. So that was in my marketing early on because I did fail a check ride. And as much as that hurt, it shaped what I do today. There's no doubt in my mind that that's why I'm here, sitting here talking to you, doing a podcast, and why Hogs was created, because that failure was probably the best thing that could have happened to me. As much as it hurt, I took it with an FAA not a designated examiner, an FAA examiner. And the reason I chose that route was because, like a lot of people out there that are on your podcast listening, I was struggling for every penny to get through the ratings. And my instructor says, "Well, hey, you can pay the DPE or take your chance with the FAA." And I try to make it a short story because this could go on way too long. But I, like typical person, yes, I had all the requirements. Yes, we had done the ground school. But I think my nerves got to me. I did not sleep the night before, not even a wink, because I was so freaked out, so scared. And this gentleman, the first thing he wants to do is look at the aircraft logbooks. Well, every time that we went to do aircraft logbooks during my training, the instructor would go, "Oh, well, they're locked up. Mechanics aren't here. We'll do that another day." So we start the check ride. He wants to go to the aircraft logbooks, and I'm leafing page to page. Well, he's sitting there tapping the table, huffing and puffing. And finally I said, "Okay, sir, I got to be honest. I've never seen this book before." And he's like, "Really? All right, well, do your best to find that 100-hour inspection," right? So when you've never seen an aircraft logbook before, especially on an older aircraft, that could be quite intimidating. So that sets the stage. He's already frustrated. That was after we went and found the instructor and made him go get the logbooks, right? So starts off on a bad note. So I'm tired, I'm nervous. We start off on a bad note, and it just went downhill from there. And he even gave me a chance at one point, said, "Hey, let's calm down. Let's go outside. Let's talk a little bit." He gave me like 10 minutes. And he said, "Obviously you're nervous, but I need you to calm down a little bit so we can get through this." We go back in and he starts hammering me about, "You're out here in a hover and the engine quits. Which way's the nose going to go?" And asking me about selling with power. And I'm struggling through selling with power. And eventually he just says, "Kenny, I'm going to have to stop the test here today." Okay. He said, "You're clearly struggling. We stopped and I gave you a break, but if I come to your helicopter accident," or he said, "I don't want to come to your helicopter accident," is basically what he said. "And when I ask you about selling the power, I want to hear 30-20-10, because back in that day, we used 30-20-10. Rate of descent, 300 feet per minute, using 20 to 100% of power, airspeed less than 10. At the time, it was less than 10. And so that set the tone, right? I left devastated that I failed. Drove home, didn't go back for 6 months because I was just so terrified. And I was a police officer at the time. And one of my buddies said, "Are you ever going to go back and finish that helicopter thing?" And I'm like, "You know what? I need to." And I went down to the local drugstore, bought me a book. I went home and just started writing out every note that I ever had from every piece of paper, from any flight school I'd been to, every instructor I'd been with. I just started writing down stuff down, things I had trouble remembering, and created what I call my notebook that I'm still using all these years later, and based my original training on this notebook that I created. But I studied and studied and studied to the point that there was no way that I was going to fail when I went back. And that, again, I think is, it's when somebody asks me, well, hey, how do you make it in this industry? I'm like, be better than everybody else. And they're like, well, how do you do that? I go, it's not really that hard. It's apply yourself, but don't just do what it takes to get by. Study and be as knowledgeable as you can, because most people just do enough to get by. They just do enough to get through the test. If you just study like a madman or a madwoman and you just go for it, you're going to go a long way in your career because you took that extra time to be the best you could be.
Yeah, and I think it goes, I think one of the hard parts about being a helicopter pilot really is being able to stay current on all that stuff. It's easy to kind of embrace that knowledge leading up to a check ride. How do you, I think the biggest struggle that I had in my helicopter career is how do you continue? I think that's really the true mark of a professional helicopter pilot, is someone that's always kind of studying, always wanting to learn, always open to learn, because it's important. I agree with you 100% that it's very easy for pilots, especially when you're flying the line on your 135 job, or you're flying your medical, or whatever you're doing. It's easy to kind of just say, I don't necessarily need to go and review this stuff again. That was just for my check ride. So it's not just important to kind of study leading up to it, but also creating those good study habits. Did you find going into the retake of your check ride feeling more prepared, that you were less nervous, or are you just kind of a nervous Nelly when it comes to check rides?
It was night and day difference. I want to say that I have to mention, I think it's okay if I can name names. Jerry Ventrella, legend in the industry. The guy's in his 80s and he's still giving check rides now.
Awesome.
And I knew this guy's reputation, and his orals are like 5, 6, 7 hours long. And that going into it, right? So I went to him for the retest, and about halfway through, he went, "You brought in a pink slip today." And I'm like, "I sure did." And he goes, "Tell me about that pink slip." And I gave him the quick story, kind of like I gave you today, about I didn't sleep and I was so nervous and I was freaked out. And he goes, "Well, we're not done yet, but we're halfway through and you're batting 100%. You're answering everything right on, to a T." And he's like, "What did you do?" And I said, "I went home and I created this notebook and I studied and I studied and I studied, because there was no way I wanted to go through failing again." And he's like, "Well, you know what? You've applied yourself. It's obvious." And he said, "I'm even going to reach out to that FAA examiner and let him know that you did come back, because we're a small community and we don't fail people because we want them to never come back. We fail people because we want them to learn and come back and do better." And so, because I studied so darn hard, again, that failure, I didn't want to do it again. I did not want to go through. And so it was still difficult, but it's, in your own heart, if you're ready, did I just do enough to kind of get by, or did I go through that PTS and I know everything, every single subject line in there? Do I know every emergency? Do I know every aerodynamic concept that can get me killed? Do I know that stuff? And I remember the kid that helped me retest, he's like, "Helicopter emergencies, helicopter aerodynamics, man. Know them so well that you can't forget them, because that's what'll get you killed if you don't understand." So it was, having a good instructor who helped reshape and get me ready that second time around, and just studying like crazy.
I was really fortunate. I went to a large, helicopter flight school. It wasn't perfect. No flight school is perfect, but
Sure.
I would say that by the time I was there in 2008 timeframe, they knew what they were doing. They were pushing out a lot of pilots every year. I think they probably had, 40 helicopter CFIs, 20 plus helicopters. I mean, a big training facility. So I feel like I got well-rounded training. One area that I felt lacked a little bit was exactly what you were just talking about going and looking at aircraft records. selling helicopters nowadays, I almost probably have a doctorate in reviewing aircraft records and
Nice.
auditing records, and I feel very comfortable, especially on like a piston, like a Robinson. I mean, those are very easy for me now, but that was such a foreign, scary idea, and I felt like the school that I went to kind of failed a little bit in getting students comfortable. What are some other things that you see that schools are kind of missing a little bit when it comes to providing a good, solid education? I feel like there's probably some consistent gaps that you see being in that training world.
Well, I've had an interesting opportunity in the last year to give a good take on this. On the past, since May, I've been operating a Robinson R44. And due to our ground school, we have members that come from around the country to come here to finish their rating with me because they may have been with me 1 month, 2 years. I've had people, that come out to fly with me that's been in my ground school since the beginning, for 12 years. And here's what I see coming from people they've come from Maine, Florida, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Oregon, California. So I'm getting people from all around the outskirts of the United States. And what I have seen this summer and this fall is people rushing in the cockpit. And I believe you have EMS experience, right? Did you mention that to me? And so that you probably
Yep.
you're going to get where I'm going with this. In the EMS environment, we all have 2,000 hours or more, right? And I was told from the very beginning, hey, you have a past in police department and fire department, so you probably ran to the fire truck and you ran to the police car. Yep. They're like, we don't run any EMS helicopters. We walk to the helicopter. We walk around the helicopter. We get in, we use our checklist, and we go through step by step, right? And then we're trained to try to not let the emotions get involved in the cockpit, right? We're to do nothing other than fly cargo. And some people go, oh my God, well, that sounds horrible. Well, no, as an EMS pilot, we have to get everybody safely point A to point B. If we rush, if we hurry, if we get excited, we get emotionally involved, we make those bad choices. So if we fly that way in the helicopter EMS environment, why are these men and women that are showing up here in this great big rush in the cockpit? I mean, rushing in the cockpit. And not only rushing, really aggressive in the cockpit, really aggressive with collective, aggressive on a lot of maneuvers. And that's what I'm seeing as that I have this interesting opportunity now where I have people coming from across the country, from both sides and from down south that come here. They're all coming here for advanced ratings. They're coming here to finish a rating. We call it the final approach course. One gentleman had 180 hours working on his private, those types of situations where for whatever reason, they can't get a check ride done.
Sure.
And we bring them in and go, okay, we do some Zooms before they get here. I make sure they go through Hogs, go through every single video for the course they're going for. We do some Zooms. We send all their paperwork up. I make sure that we have that relationship before we get here. We climb in an aircraft and we go do it. So I have this firsthand knowledge of seeing what people are doing and people lacking in the basics, rushing the cockpit, being too aggressive on controls. And I guess those are the top two things that I'm seeing, and people still being lacking in knowledge. And I think maybe it's that when you're at home studying and you think you're good enough, but then you're sitting across the table from an instructor or an examiner or a different instructor, it's very hard to pull that knowledge out of people because that different environment, sitting across the table. At home, you know it, and then you're answering questions to someone. It becomes very hard to verbalize it and take that from your brain and get it relayed to the person you're sitting across from.
Totally. Yeah. No, I mean, it's funny that you talk about people moving quickly in the cockpit. I saw that a lot too, and I think I've even been guilty of it in different lifetimes that I've different careers, I should say, that I've flown. I've caught myself moving too quickly, and I've certainly caught a lot of students when I was teaching, thinking that starting the helicopter and getting off the ground was like a race, like they're trying to
Yeah.
break a Guinness record of how quickly we could start and lift off. And I really have this whole thing in life now, and anything that I do is kind of slow. Slow is fast, right?
Yep.
In fact, in air medical, I don't know if you felt this way, but usually my launch times would be better if I wasn't rushing. There was certainly times where you get woken up from a call at 3 in the morning and you're a little dazed, and so you're kind of moving quickly, trying to wake yourself up. And, it takes you forever to get off the ground, even though you're trying to move fast. Whereas if I just slowly got out of bed, peeked at the weather, grabbed my stuff, slowly walked out to the helicopter, did my walk around, start the helicopter, I'm off, in 10 minutes. Whereas if I'm rushing, maybe it's a 15-minute plus launch time. And so slow is really fast sometimes. And specifically in the helicopter world, aeromedically, I always looked at aeromedical as like, this is not my emergency. And I don't want to create a new emergency because I'm not willing to use my checklist or I'm trying to move too quickly. And so I think that's a really valid point. And it's interesting to hear that you're getting, bombarded from both sides of the coast with kind of this consistent thing. And I think part of that is, schools not putting an emphasis on it, but just human nature. I feel like it's human nature for, everything has to be quick, right? If our phones don't load a website in a half a second, we're pissed off. If the car in front of us is going the speed limit and we want to go 5 or 10 over, it pisses us off. I mean, we're always just in this chaotic, fast moving. So, I think it's kind of just the way we are as humans. And so it's interesting. And I'm glad that you brought that up. And to our listeners out there, I see it all the time. I see it with a lot of private clients that I work with and helping them buy their helicopters when I go fly with them, not really using the checklist, moving really fast. It's not a race. You're going to forget stuff. So, Kenny, I appreciate you bringing that point up. I want to learn more about your background, but first I want to hear from our sponsors.
Thank you to our sponsor, Hillsboro Heli Academy. Embark on your helicopter pilot journey with Hillsboro Heli Academy. Known worldwide, they make it easy to achieve both U.S. and European helicopter licenses. Visit flyhaa.com to schedule your introductory flight and turn your dream into a career.
All right. Thank you to our sponsors for making the Helicopter Podcast possible. And a big thanks to Kenny Keller. Where are you coming from today, Kenny? Where are you at? Where are you hangared again?
I am at the Warsaw Municipal Airport in Warsaw, Indiana, north central part of the state.
Nice. How's the weather in the Midwest this time of year? Cold?
I hate to say it out loud, but so far, been kind of mild.
Been mild,
and I'm hoping that we get lucky and it stays that way all winter. But we'll find out in the next month.
Those could be dangerous words. Playing with fire, Kenny.
Yeah.
I'm in the Pacific Northwest, and one of the reasons I'm here is because I'm an avid skier, and I live about 30 minutes from very good skiing. But El Nino this year has been making it very mild. We're getting more rain than we're getting snow. So I personally am hoping that temperatures will go down a little bit and we can get some better snow.
Sure.
One of the things that I was interested in talking about, first and foremost, I appreciate your candidness of speaking about failing a check ride. To our listeners out there, first and foremost, a check ride is your time to go and just show someone that you know the level of what you're supposed to know. And like Kenny said, if you're prepared for that check ride, it will usually come with less nerves, but I think it's perfectly normal to feel nervous. I know before every check ride that I've ever done is you get nervous, whether it's your first private check ride, which is probably the more nervous one because you have no idea what to expect, or if it's your, 15th check ride at the air medical company you've been flying with for 15 years. There's always some nerves going into a check ride. So as my mom would say, you got to figure out a way to put those butterflies into formation and go out there. And I think a good way of doing that is being prepared, specifically on the ground side, and really not just having this rote memorization of topics, but have, this understanding and correlation of knowing what's going on. And don't look at it as a perspective of just needing that information to pass a check ride. You need that information to be safe. I want to know what puts me into settling with power, because I don't want to get into that. And if I do get into it by accident, which I have flying E&G back in the day, I want to know how to recognize it and get out of it. I want to know LTE. I don't want to just be able to tell you the 3 different positions of the wind. I want to actually have a full understanding of why more power makes LTE worse. What can I anticipate in the cockpit? So don't look at it as a way of just passing a check ride. This is all information that could save your life sometime. We're all going to be tested as pilots. So I'm sure Kenny can kind of support that. So I appreciate you being honest about your check ride. And, look at you now, right? Very well known for teaching people and have a great reputation. So if you do happen to bust a check ride, it's not the end of the world, and certainly something that's not going to hinder your career. One other thing that I found fascinating in your email to me, Kenny, was you've been in an accident. Been fortunate enough to have people on the show before that's been through accidents. And the way that I view accidents in the helicopter world is I view them as our opportunity to be able to learn from what happened. And specifically when someone survives, it can be really great knowledge to kind of see what happened and go and talk through that situation. So I don't know anything about your accident, so I'd love to hear about it.
Okay. Well, I'll start with saying that it's another, factor that shaped what I do today. And even though it was a pretty horrific event, it changed the way I think, right? It changed my outlook on maintenance, and it changed my outlook on vibrations and how I approach a pre-flight and what I will tolerate being wrong with an aircraft and what I will not, right? Like, I've had every struggle along the way like everybody else. And I know from 12 years of doing this, almost everybody has a struggle, whether it's money, whether it's failing a check ride, whether it's struggle studying, the list goes on struggles that a person could have. And I've had all of mine throughout the whole entire career. I'm still here doing it, and I'm still flying because I love it and I like to teach, and I'm here doing it. And the helicopter accident happened right at that 2,000 hour mark, which is what I mentioned to you in the email. And when it happened to me, I was like, man, why is it every time I'm ready for that next point in my career, something happens almost every time? And on this particular accident, I was flying a turbine Instrom helicopter. I had attended a specialized school. I was already qualified in all the Instrom gas-powered products. Went to specialized school where I could also teach in the Instrom turbine helicopter. And we had a nice helicopter we were flying. Private owner owned the aircraft. And at that time, Instrom had been using this hydraulic damper that they've been using forever, since the guy started building them back in the 50s, 60s. And that hydraulic damper was required a lot of maintenance, and you had to occasionally bleed them and, watch the fluids. And in turn, it also made the helicopter do what we call the Instrom bounce. You go to pick it up and set it down, helicopter would shake. But it's a normal amount of, depending on how your skids are set, how much pressure's in your skids, your oleo struts, there's a different amount of vibration that you can have. But at that point, I'd flown, I think, like 32 different Instrom makes and models, right? So I was very experienced in this shake, this Instrom bounce. And they came out with a new elastomeric damper. So you're going to take this time-tested, proven piece in the rotor system. Instrom maintenance manual even said Instrom helicopters do not suffer ground resonance, right? So even though it's a fully articulated system, none of us were worried about them blowing apart from ground resonance. And we're flying this aircraft, one of the only ones in the world that has the new elastomeric damper. And we started having some funny vibrations that started happening. And the first time it happened, we literally were getting ready to leave Indiana and go back to Chicago, where the owner was from. And this new elastomeric damper took away that shake, right? So nobody really wants to hear about us having any kind of a problem, because you're not going to have to bleed these things. They're maintenance free. It took away this Instrom bounce. They've got probably millions of dollars and years of testing on this new part. And I'm not bashing Instrom, by the way. I ended up buying an Instrom aircraft after the fact, just to help the story along. This is just an event that happened, right? And so a couple different things happened. First time it happened, I shut the aircraft down. And maintenance, or our actual airport manager, comes out. I actually worked for the same guy who ran the company. And he's like, man, what happened? I go, we just had this crazy shake. And so I wanted our local mechanic to look at it, but the owner wanted his guy to come down and look at it from Chicago. And so he has his guy come down and he checks the struts and says, hey, the struts were a little flat. So we think that was the problem. We pumped them up. You should be good to go. And okay, I got what I wanted. The mechanic took a look, did some maintenance. I flew it and it was fine. And within a few weeks later, we were prepping the owner for his check ride, and a kid that was in the back seat had just got his private and was working on his commercial, another one of my students. And we were coming in for lunch on a beautiful day. And I like telling this, I like mentioning that I'm a firm believer in the bad judgment chain, right? Like, we make one bad decision in the morning and then you make another bad decision and something else happens. And we know the bad judgment chain. I'm a firm believer in that. But this day, everything was perfect. I'm at my 2,000 hour mark. I want to finish up this guy. I'm getting ready to apply for the local EMS place. And I'm trying to get a job flying a news reporting helicopter in the area. And we come in for lunch on a Friday, beautiful day. The owner had live lobster shipped from the East Coast. We're coming in. He's getting ready for his check ride in just a week or so. Sets the helicopter down. Everybody's out in the ramp waiting for us to land. He sets it down on the ground, and the helicopter just goes nuts. We're on the ground. He rolled the throttle off. This thing just goes crazy. So it shakes so bad that I can remember thinking, I'm past law enforcement, right? So at the Law Enforcement Academy, you're trained, you fight to the end, right? You fly it to the end, or you fight to the end. You don't give up no matter what. And I can remember this thing spinning out of control. I can remember it coming apart. And I remember trying to grab the controls, and it's shaking so bad that I can't even get a hold of them. And at a certain point, I'm knocked unconscious. Owner's knocked unconscious. We're both shot out both sides of the aircraft because the canopy goes away. The seat belts are attached to the seat. So our seats break from the floor. We both get ejected. The owner and me, the kid stays in the back. He's strapped to the fuselage itself.
God.
Helicopter goes flying again in between us. Now, this is I'm getting from the witnesses because we were both out cold. We were laying on the ground. The helicopter starts to go back up, does some spinning, tail boom comes flying off. It comes back down and lands on the ground. And, of course, crushes the skids. Helicopter's destroyed. All that's left is just a little bit of the fuselage. Except for that rotor system is, like, perfect, right? It withstands this horrific event. And very quickly they figured out that, this new elastomeric damper had failed. And there was nothing we could do. The tip of the blade was 14 inches out of phase.
Wow.
The elastomeric dampers all deformed. FAA and then TSB shows up and goes, yep, looks like mechanical failure. And they went home, right? And when the accident report come out, we didn't get blamed, which how we know we're normally get blamed as the pilot, right? I'm in the ambulance going to the hospital going, well, okay, I guess I could go back to being a cop, or, maybe I could go back to building houses because I had construction experience. And I'm in the ambulance on the way to the hospital trying to figure out, what am I going to do with my life because my career's over? I'm going to get blamed. I just crashed this helicopter. My career's going to be over. And luckily, I got through it. I got past it. And as soon as I was able to climb back in a helicopter, I went back and started flying again. And I think probably the biggest thing for me was I've talked about it ever since it happened. Of course, attorneys all tell you, don't talk to anybody. Don't talk to your friends. Don't, they want you to go home and say nothing. So I had a newborn baby, a little girl. I couldn't even pick her up because I had a back injury. I couldn't even lift a gallon of milk. So I'm going to be home for like 3 months recuperating. And even though the attorneys and everybody said, don't talk about it, what am I going to do? I'm at home hurt. I can't do anything. I'm on the phone every day talking to everybody and their brother, my family, my friends, telling everybody about my accident. And to this day, I've never had a nightmare over it.
Yeah, that's good.
And I want to say it's because I did talk about it, right? Because I was open about it. I've always talked about it because, again, as I started the conversation, it makes you look differently when you feel a vibration. It makes you look differently. Oh, those struts are a little bit off on that thing. Those are a little bit flat. And the mechanic says, oh, just fly it, right? No, I'm not going to just go fly it. Go out there and put it back where it's supposed to be. I know where it should be. Fix it, right? Like, so I guess my biggest takeaway is we all learn how to properly pre-flight, right? And we also know in our hearts and guts sometimes when things aren't right. And we were experiencing some trouble with this aircraft. I'm at my 2,000 hour mark. I was even threatening to not fly it. And I was going, you guys better find out what's going on with this thing because there's something is not right. And in the end, that's what happened. And I got through it. And here I am still doing it today. So one big thing that I want to mention is, like our insurance guy, I've been using the same insurance guy for 10 years, over 10 years. And he says, your career's not over because you've had an accident. Helicopters get wrecked, right? I've heard of companies that won't hire you unless you've had an accident, which is a different take on that. I don't know if you've ever heard that or not.
But I haven't heard that, but I can see I guess the premise behind it, depending on the accident, of course.
Yep. So and here's the last thing I want to say is it can happen to anybody. It doesn't matter how good you think you are. I was, I was younger. I was egotistical. Hey, and everything that day was right. I mean, I left on time. I did the proper pre-flight. I checked the struts. I did everything. We were on time. We had no issues. So all the time we're talking about accidents when people do dumb things and flying into bad weather and going inadvertent IMC and all that stuff is really, really bad. But that accident can happen on the most beautiful day when absolutely everything is going right. It can still happen to you. So I think that's the other big takeaway for me is just, it can't happen to any one of us, right? And that's why we have to be careful and take our time and do proper pre-flights and study. And when we find a problem with the aircraft, you let somebody know about it. And if it's something in your heart or is in your gut telling you that you shouldn't go, then you shouldn't go.
Absolutely.
Stay on the ground and figure it out.
We're all susceptible to accidents. The helicopter at the end of the day is a very neat machine, very cool machine. But there's so much going on. And you're right. Typically when we look at an accident, I think they call it like the Swiss cheese, right? It's all the different bad decisions made from, the night before all the way through the accident.
Yep.
Kind of aligns. But it's a good point that you could do everything right and still have a bad day in a helicopter. Kind of, that's one of my things I tell people about helicopters is, helicopters are great until they're not great. It's mostly human error, but also mechanical. Mechanical failure can happen. It sounds like this was a catastrophic failure. You're lucky to be alive. Getting thrown out of a helicopter with rotors still spinning. I mean, goodness gracious, it sounds like a chaotic event. And I'm glad that you're okay. And I'm glad that, again, you've continued to talk about it because I think it's important. And again, as you said, your career's not over, especially in that kind of instance. I mean, that's just a really unlucky deal. And I think in our careers, another point that I took away from you is you're going to have times in your career where you're doing a pre-flight, something doesn't look right. Like Kenny said, have a maintenance guy come and look at it. And if you're not satisfied with his answer, try to dig a little bit deeper or just choose not to fly that day. The good news is the helicopter industry and most companies are becoming better about supporting good pilot decisions. And so there's not always that pushback anymore, especially at the bigger operators. But if you're working for a smaller operator, you may have to advocate for yourself a little bit and say, hey, look, I'm throwing in the flag here. Let me go if you want to let me go. I don't feel comfortable with this helicopter. And if you don't think that's the right decision, then, I don't think I'm the right pilot for this job. So it's being able to use your knowledge that you have as a pilot to make those good pilot decisions. Crazy story. How many years ago was that?
That was, I think 2005.
Yeah, so it's a minute ago, a long time ago. You've been in this game for a long time.
Yep.
I want to start transitioning into your business and what people can expect in using Helicopter Online Ground School. But real quickly, we're going to hear from our sponsors.
Thank you to our sponsor, Robinson Helicopter Company, the choice for unrivaled safety and reliability so you can accomplish any mission with confidence. For more than half a century, Robinson has been at the forefront of the helicopter industry. From the R-22 to the R-66 turbine, Robinson makes helicopters accessible so more people can accomplish more missions. Climb higher. For additional information, visit www.robinsonheli.com.
All right. Thanks to our sponsors again for making the Helicopter Podcast possible. I am joined by Mr. Kenny Keller today of Helicopter Online Ground School, Hogs for short. I like that. Love that your clients actually kind of came up with that term.
Yeah.
I'm interested, in our correspondence, it sounds like you have some bit of very much an entrepreneurial spirit. You've been in the flight school business. As we all know, it's a very hard business. Operating aircraft is not for the faint of heart, and it takes a big pocketbook, and it's not easy. And it sounds like you experienced some of those hurdles on the flight school side of the house, and then you ultimately kind of realized that you had so much knowledge to share, and that you could monetize that knowledge by creating Hogs. So I think you've been in business now, is it over 10 years?
Yep. It'll be 12 years, March 1st, 2024.
Wow. That's odd. Well, congratulations to that. As a business owner myself, every year that you can sustain a business is big kudos. I think most businesses fail within about 3 years. I think as Americans, we're all familiar with the big business tycoons, the Elon Musks and the Mark Cuban and things like that. What we never talk about is us guys and gals that are out there operating smaller businesses and doing it with not a ton of resources, not a ton of money all the time, very skinny budget. And to be able to be successful is very challenging. So first and foremost, Kenny, congratulations on 12 years. How did this idea come about? And just walk me through that progression of when you decided of essentially kind of your light bulb moment of, hey, this is the path that I'm going to take.
Well, as you can imagine, in the late 90s when I started, there was no online ground schools, right? There, you had some airplane VHS tapes you could watch out there, but I can remember driving to my lessons going, God, I would drive 2 hours to a lesson, 2 hours home. Always wishing, man, I could pop at that time a cassette in and listen to a cassette. So I'd do it the old fashioned way, study like crazy, one-on-one with your instructors. And when I got into the EMS side of things, I also owned a helicopter that I was operating in flight school on my days off. So I'm struggling as a business owner, actually flying EMS. My paycheck, of course, is from the EMS job is going into the helicopter company, right? So I'm slowly sinking. My decent paycheck's going in to keep the business alive. And a young man comes in who, fellow EMS pilot, new to our base. He wasn't new EMS, but transferring to our base, he was also an internet marketer. And he did blogs and videos. And he goes, hey, you should be marketing your little helicopter company with video. And you should be doing blog posts. And Lindsay, can you hand me that camera over there? He sells me a blog for like $300, little WordPress blog. And he loans me this little flip video camera that I used to start making videos. And
wow.
The first video I made, I'm sitting in my trailer with this borrowed little camera with it sitting on a cereal box because I couldn't even afford a tripod or a camera. And I lived in a trailer. I lived in a mobile home because I owned a helicopter and I couldn't afford anything better than a trailer. And
the irony.
So I start blogging and doing videos to promote my little helicopter company. And pretty soon after I started doing that, his name was Nick Logan. Hopefully he hears this podcast. Nick goes, you know what? You should start an online ground school. And I thought, you know what? That's a pretty darn good idea. Because as I mentioned, when you first asked me the question, I know what it was like trying to learn all this stuff on my own. And so the idea was born build an online ground school. So I start doing the online ground school. I leave EMS. I'm doing my helicopter thing full time, but it's still going down the tubes. The helicopter's not generating enough money. I launched ground school, and at the time I sold a lifetime membership for like $277. I'm driving to the airport one night, and I have a customer coming on who has money on account for a night flight, and I don't have enough money to buy fuel. And I'm thinking, I'm going to have to ask this customer who's already got money on account to buy the fuel tonight. My phone goes off. Ding, Hogs membership, $277. Nice. So I got money to buy gas tonight. Get to the airport, pull out the helicopter, put it in, ka-chink, 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 and I look over and I'm going, I had that moment where I went, okay, this helicopter company has taken my savings, my property, whatever little bit of retirement I had is all gone. And now I'm making money selling my knowledge online. And now this helicopter, it's going into the tank of this helicopter. I'm done. I'm done with ownership. I'm done with running a flight school. I'm done. I can make money selling my knowledge. And I'd had an offer on the aircraft. And I went to a smart businessman I knew who was actually a pilot who got laid off after 9/11, has built a good business for himself since. And I went to him because he was a great businessman. He goes, Kenny, let that helicopter go. Your knowledge is what's the value. You are the value. Your knowledge is the value. That helicopter means nothing. You got an offer, let it go. So I took my buddy's advice, left the helicopter or sold, let the helicopter go and just dove in full time for helicopter online ground school.
That's incredible. Unfortunately, I think when did Hogs start? Then 12 years. I can't really do math that good, but I think I was probably kind of done with my training by the point where you were just probably getting going. And since that time, I've seen your videos on Facebook and things like that. So your face is familiar to me, but I never got to actually experience your program.
Sure.
Is your program meant as like a supplement to someone that's going to a flight school for them to use as a self-study? Or is it really a full replacement for maybe the ground that they're doing at their flight school? And is it challenging for some people because maybe they have ground requirements of a 141 program or something like that? So is it meant to supplement? What does that all look like?
Well, it started out, that notebook I mentioned, it started out just kind of like check ride prep. But that was, quick to build, prepping somebody for a check ride. What it's turned into 12 years later is all 4 of our courses are FAA approved. You can get FAA wings credit for going through any of the courses. And they've turned into full-fledged courses for each one, private, commercial, instrument, CFI. So not only do we go through all of the, we go through the practical test standards, we teach all the subject areas all the way through for a full entire course of training. We have quizzes throughout the modules, or we'll call them lessons. Like, let's say private pilot has 18 lessons. Each lesson may have 10 to 12 videos. At the end of each lesson, there's a quiz. And at the end of those lessons, we have current, updated FAA practice test. You can take those as many times as needed, and that reports to the FAA. So if you want wings credit for any time you use any of our written test practice, that is there as well. So we're recognized by the FAA, and they're 4 full-blown courses. And I always, how do I put this? Our students have taken it beyond what I ever envisioned it. My vision as a CFI was, you fly and you do ground. You fly, you do ground. You fly, you do ground. You do them both together. We have people now showing up at their flight school and walking in, and their ground is basically done. And the first time that it happened, the flight school reached out to me, not the student. The student came from out of the country, learned the English language, comes over here, walks into a flight school in Florida, and the instructor reaches out to me. He goes, Kenny, one of your members just walked in here, and they did an evaluation. They told me his ground school was done. He's a brand new student. And he goes, I didn't believe him. So I sat down and did ground with him. He goes, he had every bit of knowledge he needed. We started flying immediately. 3 days later, he had his written test done. 3 weeks later, he was a private pilot because all we did was fly. And I was like, that's not how I designed this, right? I designed it for people to supplement, whether you're doing it on your own or whether you're paying an instructor and you want to supplement. Or, some flight schools say, here's the book, read it. We know this goes on, right? They want the blades spinning. They want to be out there in a pattern, and they don't want to teach you anything. So it's for anyone, whether you want to use it because your instructor's busy flying EMS and he doesn't want to do ground with you, or you're doing ground 101, but you want supplemental training you can do at home from your iPad, your iPhone, in your pajamas at 2 a.m. We have progress tracking. There's all kinds of features within the site. As you can imagine, in 12 years, it's just continued to build and get bigger and more entailed. It's, all of our courses combined, there's over 650 videos between 4 courses. So
that's wild.
It's a massive amount of training, and we're just a small little company. And I continually have people, like one of our final approach customers here this summer. He comes in, he goes, where is everybody, Kenny? And I go, we're all right here. And he's like, 3 of you? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, I came from Oregon. I thought you had 15 people in here. And I'm like, no, this is just us, right? So it's an incredible amount of work that we've done as this little tiny company. And it comes from, as you and I talked on the phone, my first 5 years of this was 14 hours a day, 7 days a week. I did nothing but build videos. And it's just build and build and build and build and build. And it's grown over the years, and people need the help, whether you're brand new and you want to learn it all ahead of time, or you've been out and you failed a check ride. We've had people that called up, man, I just failed the oral. I don't want to fail again. Well, sign up and do our course, right? So it's grown into something bigger than I ever imagined that I created as check ride prep, and it's turned into 4 full-blown FAA approved courses.
Yeah, no, that's so cool. It's funny how things happen like that, right? You build something with one intention, and then it just turns into something completely different. It's
Exactly.
kind of similar with how I feel with my podcast, to be honest. So that's really neat. I wish, one of the hardest things for me as a student was actually the ground portion.
Yep.
Part of it was that I'm not a great student, and the fact that I don't love to study, or at least at that time, I didn't know how to properly study. As I've become an older person, I've figured out ways that I best learn and how I can study. And so that's been helpful in my later years. But early years, studying was very difficult for me. Understanding this very foreign knowledge at that time was very, very confusing. Getting into the FAR aim, aerodynamics, weather, it's not intuitive. At least for me, it wasn't intuitive. So I wish that I would have had that resource when I was going through flight school, because I think that would have been really helpful. A lot of our listeners out there, actually, Kenny, are learning how to fly and are getting into it. So where can they find you? How can they enroll in your course? How can they become members of your Hogs community to help with their helicopter goals and ratings and certificates?
Helicopterground.com. That is the website, and they can see all 4 courses are there. And then we have a professional pilot membership that includes everything for just like a one-time fee. And the beauty of the monthlies is they can sign up for a 24-hour test flight. So they can sign up, go in for 24 hours and view the entire course, not just a little sample like some of the other guys. You can go in for 24 hours and go, I want to go see what this Hogs is all about. And if you go in and you like it, you can go, okay, I'm going to keep it for a month. And you can keep as long as you like, cancel anytime. You can leave and you can come back. So we give, and we've had that in place for 12 years so that there's no secret. Like, go in, take a look at the training. If it's right for you, don't do anything. Just keep it, and you'll get billed monthly until you unsubscribe. Or, keep it as long as you like, cancel anytime. And these members that you see on the wall as they roll through, they come in, do their private, and then they leave for a few months, and then pretty soon they come back for instrument, and then they leave for a little while, and then they come back for commercial. So that's the beauty of the monthly, and why we build it that way, is so that they can use it when they're flying. They need to take a break because, oh man, I got to work extra the next month. Okay, just unsubscribe. It's easy. And then when you come back, when you need the training. So we've made it like super accessible for anybody to go right to the homepage at helicopterground.com and just sign up for that monthly membership. And again, it's cancel anytime, come back anytime, as many times as needed. We part as friends if you don't like the training. Hey, not every product or service is right for every one person. And for the whole entire 12 years, we've had a 30-day, 100% money back guarantee. And everybody's like, oh my God, I would never do that. I'm like, No, that's what I've done since the beginning, right? It's the burden's on us to provide students with valuable training that they can use. So if I can't provide that, then I don't want your money,
Yeah.
So
I like the idea of making business easy, right? Or I should say the customer experience easy. I think that's why Amazon is so successful, is because it's so easy to shop on Amazon. It's so easy to make a return, so easy to get refunded.
Yep.
So I appreciate that you're doing that in your business. So to our listeners out there, helicoptergroundschool.com?
Just helicopterground.com, just simple.
Oh, excuse me.
Yep, helicopterground.com. And then we actually have a 7-day-a-week phone number as well. We have somebody that mans that phone 7 days a week. If anybody wants to text, they want to call, instead of, oh, well, I'm not sure, I have a question. We have somebody that they can talk to 7 days a week. So
They're not going to talk to a robot.
Not talk to a robot. Nope. Everybody's going that route, right? Like everybody's putting that on their site now where you got to talk to a robot. I'm going to hold off on making them talk to a robot for as long as I can, just because I feel like people are going to still continue to need that, right? I know how frustrated I am when I want to talk to a company and I get the robot and I'm like, you're not good enough yet to answer my questions, robot.
Yeah, it's not quite there yet, for sure.
It's just not good enough. So I don't want to turn people away because a robot's going to answer them on our website. No, I have not implemented that.
Good. And I support that. Well, Kenny, thank you so much. I always know a good podcast when it feels like it goes by way too fast. We're already hitting up on our limit here. It's kind of the good thing. All my podcasts feel so fast because all my guests are so awesome. So Kenny, I appreciate that. To our listeners out there, I know I got a lot of guys and gals out there that are in their training, thinking about getting into the training. I don't have a dog in the fight here with Helicopter Online Ground School. But I'm very familiar with them, and I would recommend them just based on what I've heard from their users, people reaching out and sharing their experiences. So it seems like Kenny and his team of 3, lean and mean, is doing it right. So please check them out. And I'm excited to stay in touch with Kenny. I think obviously what you're doing for the industry is awesome. The one last thing that I want to finish on, Kenny, is just tell me a little bit about your no-go button that you've created.
I'm glad that you asked that. That's part of when I already mentioned that when members pass, they send in their picture. And what we created is what we call the no-go button. And very simply, when I flew helicopter EMS, I was flying opposite a Vietnam era pilot. And you probably know some Vietnam era guys that you've learned from. You learn the best stuff from those guys, right? They're this wealth encyclopedia of knowledge. And making the no-go decision can be hard for anybody, private pilot or otherwise. And in EMS, there was always the pressure of you're taking a flight. Of course, the medical crew wants to go, hospital wants you to go. You got to make that decision. Am I going? Am I not? And this Vietnam era pilot he had the Staples Easy button sitting at where we make our weather decision. So when he declined a flight for weather, say, sorry, the weather, just because of weather, we're going to not accept, we're not going to take this flight. We're going to turn it down. He'd hang up the phone and he'd go, boom, that was easy. And it helped. I liked it because it helped take away that pressure of making that decision. And so I stole the idea. Like everything I have that I've created is something I've learned from somebody else, right? I didn't create helicopter training. I've had good people that I've learned from. And I take what I learn and I take all the best pieces from everybody I learned from. And we created the no-go button, and I'll hit it for you. So we're training our students. Hey, when you want to go, you need to go, but you need to stay on the ground, you hit the button.
Live to fly another day. Helicopterground.com.
So we just put our little spin on it.
Nice.
And we've had these out there for a couple of years now, and it's working. We recently had a young man on Facebook. He was filming his solo flight. You can see crappy weather ahead of him. And he posted the video and he goes, see that weather? I'm turning around because my online instructor says, live to fly another day. I'm not going to get involved in it. I'm turning around. I'm going back. This kid posted it on the internet. And we have people that'll send pictures, little videos in. They're at their laptop looking at a thunderstorm cell, and they got the no-go button there, and they go, boom, and they click it. So they send us in the pictures. And then I've heard about them at flight schools where the kids are sitting around, hitting the no-go button. And I'm like, that's what I wanted. That was my little mark I wanted to put on the helicopter industry. If I help one person stay on the ground because there's something voice in their head said, don't do it. That's my little contribution, hopefully, to the industry, is teaching people to say, you just have to say no. You just got to say no.
It's probably the hardest thing for helicopter pilots, especially new helicopter pilots, to learn. And I certainly appreciate that. Maybe I can talk you into getting me one. I think I would like that on my desk, actually.
I'm going to send you one. I am going to send you one. I meant to tell you that we have a new shipment coming in. As soon as they arrive,
awesome.
We will reach out to you, and I will send you one. I
would love to have that. I think it's super cool. And I think it's honestly, it is probably affecting people in a positive way. And that's what I love. I love how little things can have a big impact. And specifically when it comes to helicopters, that impact could mean people not losing their lives, people getting hurt, helicopters crashing. So I think it's awesome. Obviously, it's just a commitment to you in the industry and your commitment to making it safer. So, Mr. Kenny Keller, thank you so much for joining the Helicopter Podcast. To our listeners out there, again, it's Helicopter Online Ground School. Check them out. Kenny's doing great things, and it would be could be a great option for you if you're in that training world. Thank you guys so much. Kenny, thanks again, brother.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much.
Hey, podcast listeners. My name is Halsey Schider, and I'm the principal broker and owner of Helicopter. Helicopter is a new age, data-driven, helicopter-specific sales brokerage, bringing helicopter listings to new heights. At Helicopter, we utilize digital positioning, paid advertising, and our large network of industry professionals to move your helicopter quickly and efficiently. Unsure the value of your helicopter? Lucky for you, Helicopter offers a complimentary market evaluation. All you have to do is contact the team today. Are you ready to take your helicopter listing from Mayday to payday? Easy. Fill out the contact information below, and a Helicopter pilot agent will reach out shortly. Helicopter. List it, sell it, done.